Hello, everybody. We are glad to be here in this afternoon with Colm Murphy and a part of EMCC Team Coaches practitioners. And we looking forward for an excellent session to learn more about team coaching. And it's the first session of track series about team coaching, and we'll keep ask guests to come to share with us. And today, Colm is our special guest, and he is bringing us a very interesting head as a academic, if I can say like this. I hope, Colm, you like this term. I know that you are running the first university program and research around team coaching at senior practitioner level, and you are one of the three editors, besides David Clutterbuck and Tammy Tanner, for a very special book, the Team Coaching Casebook, which I think it's very important for this moment of the team coaching development. So welcome between us. And we have here also some of our colleagues. It's Juana, Liliana, Diana, and Alex. Each of them was trained in the team coaching, and we hope to bring together with Colm some things from our experience. So, Colm, do you want to tell us something in introduction, or we can take around from the others to see what are their best hope for today's session?
Yeah, I think that would be lovely. If you'd like to ask the others what they would like, that would be great, Vlad. Thank you.
Excellent. Let's see. Who want to start?
I can start.
Okay, you first, Liliana.
Thank you, Juana. So I'm curious about what this conversation today will unveil, as each time there is something new. And I don't want to say I want this, because I want to discover what I don't know today.
Thanks, Liliana.
Thank you, Liliana. Juana?
Well, probably similar with Liliana. I do hope to find out something from Colm experience, maybe something that is beyond the book. Maybe you did not share in the book. That can help me, learn something more, so I can not be a better coach, but improve my presence as a team coach.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
It's
Diana?
about actually.
Okay. Yes, I would like to get some new ideas, not only related to the casebook, but to some concrete case study, let's say, about a team, working concrete with a team. Maybe I will get something new, more from what I have already learned from the training. Thank you.
Great. Alex?
Well, from my side, I mean, besides probably various topics that you're gonna cover out of the book, but if we are looking to our practice, I mean, team coaching, can we have a snapshot in the past, today, and how you see the future of team coaching? Because I think that it's a kind of looking to the individual coaching as well. That's an area which evolves very fast. So if you are looking to the kind of theoretical definitions that you find in the books 5 years ago, what's happening today is completely different. So maybe you can share your view on what's the future for team coaching.
Great, Alex. Yeah, no problem.
Great. So when you want to put the slides, Colm,
Yeah, let's
let
start
me
with
know.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's start with the slides. So,
Okay.
hello everybody out there. It's a real honor to be the first guest of these team coaching workshops for EMCC Romania. And please forgive me, but if I go to my next slide, my very poor attempt to say bună ziua, hello to you all, mulțumesc. Thank you for having me. That's my very bad Romanian, but it's a real honor to be here. We may also have some people from my home country as well, from Ireland and other parts of Europe. You're all very welcome. And the ethos today is it's a conversation. Let's take this hour to have a conversation just the way we do with teams, not here as the expert, here to provoke, share, listen, and raise some collective awareness. So very much looking forward to that. A little bit about me in my next slide, just to give you some context. I think Vlad has already mentioned some of this, and I really want to thank Vlad for the invite to be here. I've been team coaching since 2013. I'm also on the long road of doing a doctorate. I smile. That smile you see is a sense of resignation that the road is not finished yet. I always love it when I meet people and they say, "Are you finished your doctorate yet?" And I smile and go, "I wish you hadn't asked me that question, but the road is worth the travel." So I'm doing a doctorate at the moment on the contribution of team coaching to team effectiveness. And I guess that speaks to where team coaching is. Peter Hawkins would describe it as on the nursery slopes. We're still learning about it. And Alex talked about where is it compared to one-to-one coaching. I think it's probably where one-to-one coaching was 20 years ago. And think about how fast that journey has been in the last 20 years. So we're still trying to figure out what is it, what does it do, and we're still trying to help buyers of team coaching answer those questions. As Vlad also mentioned, I play a role at a university in helping to deliver a team coaching diploma, and we're one of the first to have the senior practitioner EMCC accreditation standards. And I was also involved in the EMCC stream to help create the initial set of standards for team coaching. And again, that's a sign of where team coaching is. EMCC now has standards and accreditation, both for programs and individuals. ICF have released their competencies. And just this week, AC, Association of Coaching, have released their competencies. So you can see where team coaching is. It's still behind where one-to-one coaching is, but it's getting more professionalized and more standards coming through. And then, as Vlad also kindly mentioned, I'm one of the co-editors of the book that's in the picture there, along with David and Tammy. And we got 23 case studies from 37 different authors, many of them working in teams, to write case studies about a piece of team coaching they were doing. And what's unique about it is it's very much a global book, but we also have the voice of the team leader and the team and the stakeholders. So it's not just from the coach's perspective, it's also including how did the team and the team leader experience it. So we hope that's a useful contribution to the field. So let's have a look at the agenda for today. These are some of the questions, along with the ones that have been posed at the very start of this session. But I'm hoping we can cover all the bases by asking, where is team coaching right now? And I guess, again, that speaks to Alex's questions. Key insights for coaches, sponsors, and teams from the casebook. And again, as Wanana mentioned, maybe something beyond the book in there. What am I seeing as key factors? So being practical, that Deanna mentioned, of some practical ideas about what is success in team coaching looking like. And then Vlad also asked me the question, why would a good to great team invest time and money through team coaching? So I've tried to answer that. and it's going to be time for Q&A. The benefit of this panel, you see, is that as I go through these slides, I'll be stopping and we'll be having a conversation between the six of us, and then roughly about halfway through, we'll open it up to everybody else to join. So it's very much about a conversation today, as opposed to you having to listen to me talk. So let's move to our first agenda item, I guess. And before we even get there, I thought it'd be useful to share some definitions of team coaching, because already, and I'd love the panel to share this with me, how if they're seeing this in their practice, but also with their clients, we've already hit upon one of the first challenges of team coaching, which is, what is it? And what does it mean? And how do we explain it to customers? Has anybody in the panel faced this challenge, or do you think there's a common understanding of what team coaching is? What's been your experience as you've developed your practice?
I don't believe that there is common understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the teams I've been talking to, or the team leaders, they were asking me what team coaching is and what I can do for them and how this is going to benefit them.
Okay. So we find that the buyers and maybe the providers were still trying to figure out what this is. Thank you. Any other observations about defining? How do any of you define team coaching, or what do you notice about this question of what is it?
What I notice as well is that, there is lack of clarity. And from my perception, when I was talking to the people and to the team leaders and the sponsors, the people want to jump quickly to the end. I mean, what is there? What are the benefits? What can I measure at the end of the process? And sometimes I notice this lack of patience in having the conversation and identifying what exactly they need in terms of what they want to achieve and how.
And how do you deal with that? Because it sounds like it's very hard to guarantee what does come out of it. It's no more than one-to-one. How have you managed to make them patient, or how have you managed to ease their anxiety, Liliana?
I was trying to put myself still in the role of a coach and not to give solutions, and rather putting more questions and somehow guiding the conversation, just getting into this. So I try to avoid this kind of giving a lot of answers in the conversation in the beginning.
Great, thank you. I'll come back to the rest of the panel in a second, but if we go back to the slide for a second, Vlad. So there's something already about this thing called team coaching, where I notice speaking to clients and buyers, they're going, team coaching, coaching is one-to-one. What do you mean team coaching? Are you coaching all the individuals? So I'm almost starting from a place of, it's what we call it as the suppliers. I'm not sure it's the right phrase or really provoking enough in the buyers of this service. And I don't have the answer. I've played around with team consciousness. I've played around with team performance. I've played around with team flow. I do notice that it's almost like we've created the vacuum cleaner, and yet nobody wakes up wondering, is there a vacuum cleaner available? What they need is a clean house. And so I think there's something about how do we speak to the need of the client? And that's often around things like clarity. It's about team dynamics. It's about performance. So I think there's something for us as practitioners to hold the phrase lightly, because I'm not sure it's always landing. But maybe it's no different than one-to-one coaching many years ago. I only started one-to-one coaching 13 years ago, and it was already getting established. But I'm sure the journey was similar. What's the outcomes of one-to-one coaching? What is this? And I don't think we have the same questions now at one-to-one, because people have experienced it. It's familiar, and so they understand it's emergent. Whereas because team coaching is new, I think there is a lot of that anxiety about what is this and what are we signing up for. So let's have a look. We're going to do a build on this slide. I just tried to look at some different definitions to get some clues about how might you explain it, because I think we'll all do it differently, and that's okay. So David Clutterbuck, I've highlighted different words here. The red is about the purpose, improving team performance. Okay, so this is about helping the team perform better. But then David's also under the underline part talking about, yes, it's team performance, but it's also anything that impacts team performance. So that could be relationships, cohesion, team dynamics. And then in the bold, he talks about how's it done. So we're going to try and help a team improve its performance through reflection and dialogue. So again, you can see how the coaching part comes in, not fixing or being the experts. Let's look at the next definition. This is from ICF. I mentioned just last year, they published a definition and some competencies. So again, their red line is the purpose is to reach the team to reach their common purpose and shared goals. It's kind of like David's with performance. So it's about purpose and shared goals. David talked about reflection and dialogue. ICF are saying partnering, co-creation, and reflection. Okay, so these are kind of similar. There's an end goal of reaching something, and we're doing it in a way where it's through reflection and dialogue. And they also mention that it may involve dynamics and relationships in a way that helps them achieve it. So there's a target of performance, but in doing that, we may also be speaking to these other things that impact performance. Let's have a look at another definition. So this is AC. They just began to release their competencies and definitions the last few weeks. Again, the red is to achieve the team's collective purpose, potential, and performance. That sounds familiar again. So if I'm meeting a client, what is this thing, team coaching? It's about team performance. It's about helping the team maximize its potential. Maybe not that different to how I describe one-to-one coaching. Again, they talk about how to do it is through the application of coaching skills, a slightly different view. So yes, there's reflection in that, but that's a bit more about coaching. And I'm not sure I agree with that application, because I think team coaching has space for non-coaches. How do we help leaders become team coaches? How do OD people and other specialists take on team coaching? I don't think you necessarily have to be a coach. That's my view, but they have a view of this team coaching skills. And again, there's something about, yes, it's to achieve performance, but it may also be about members' interdependence and being collaborative. So we have this task piece of achieving something, but then we also have the team piece of dynamics, relationships, collaboration. And then the last one, which is one that I had a part of a role in helping define, is from EMCC. So again, the red, enabling teams to develop their own solutions. We don't talk about performance, maybe we should, but it's something about they know what they need. And again, how is it done? In this language, we're saying it's a sustained series of conversations to raise individual and collective awareness and reflection. So there is a red thread here of reflection and dialogue, and it's not a one-off. So much of team development historically has been a one day, build a raft, do something different, do Myers-Briggs. And that's not what we're talking here about. We're talking about something that goes on for a number of sessions. So again, some similar principles to one-to-one, but the outcome is different. It's team performance. And it's about also looking at task work and teamwork. Let me just stop there for the panel. Any of these jumping out for you as being close to your definition, or do you find any of these more useful than others? Any of the definitions you liked or didn't like?
First of all, I have to mention that I like very much the structure you presented with the screening of the definition, with understanding the parts of it, which is amazing and is very useful for each of us. And also, I want to use this opportunity to greet Kathleen from Kenya, which shows that online help us to be present everywhere. And she also has a very interesting question, and it's somehow connected with the definition you presented. Her question is team effectiveness still a relevant term for what team coaching seek to? And if I remember well, team effectiveness, it wasn't present in any
Yeah.
of definitions.
Yeah. So, firstly, hi, Kathleen. Good to talk to you, and greetings to Nairobi. You've hit upon something I'm passionate about. When we look, so team coaching, we're still learning, we're researching. There's not a lot. We're trying to write some articles, learn more about it. On the other side, there is a whole field called team effectiveness. It's very quantitative. It's been there since the Hawthorne studies of the early 20th century. It's a lot of literature. They would say team performance is just one part of team effectiveness. So the literature, the academia says team effectiveness is three things. It's task performance to the satisfaction of our stakeholders. It's team viability. Is this team able to go again? Because you could achieve the first one. We could work as a team and achieve a task, but we might never want to talk to each other ever again. And so, how do you achieve both of those? And the third aspect is member satisfaction. Do each of us find the experience a one of growth and development? And so, team effectiveness to me is a broader view, and I think a better view for team coaching. So I think team performance is very much too focused on one aspect of that. So as you work with teams, it's also interesting in the contracting of they'll often start with the performance part, but then it's also about maybe broadening the conversation to how could this help you be more viable to keep going even as you change members? Because back to using sport just for a second, the great sports teams aren't just the ones who win something. They win it the year after and the year after. They go again. I think that's what a great team is like. But there's also something about me being part of this is fulfilling for me because of the people I'm with. So, Kathleen, I hope that answers some of your thoughts around. I think I don't know what your thoughts are, Kathleen, but I think team effectiveness is a more relevant term actually than team performance.
Super.
Okay,
Thank you.
Better keep going. I just on my time.
Yes, one moment, Colm, because Diana from our panel, she is also a teacher, and I bet she has at least one comment about these definitions.
Yes, you are right. I liked the last definition from EMCC, not because I'm a member of this organization, but because I think it's more complex than the others. And I liked that part that is to sustainable achievement of the team. And in that moment, I had something like a revelation. So I imagined a team is like a word that makes sense, and the team coach, his role can be to bring that team to make sense if there is an issue that doesn't work in that team. Maybe a letter is not in the right place, if we use this metaphor of a word, and the team coaching is fixing it, let's say, so doing the right thing.
If I take that, I don't know if it's popular in Romania, but I guess Wordle has become very popular in many countries. So that quick game where you have to guess the 5-letter word, and maybe
Yes.
maybe it's like the team have all the letters, and our role maybe not to fix, but is to help them maybe figure out what word do they need to spell. But they may not even
Yes.
realize they have a letter, and again, depending on the context, they might need to spell different things. So that just got me thinking of my challenges with Wordle, and how it wordle, I've got a bit of a process, but it's also reacting to what the results are. So I probably have the same word I start with all the time, which is like my team coaching. Then I need to figure out what to do as I move along. So yeah.
Yes, or maybe in another order, let's say if something is not working with that word, maybe if you change the place of a letter or something, you can create a new word that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I can see things in this respect.
And what I find, I don't know what others think, but I find when working with teams, they rarely have these kind of conversations. So most teams, the conversation is task, or it's last quarter or next quarter. They never stop to say what's happening now or how do we look further ahead. So again, even what letter, what word do we want to spell, or are we currently spelling? That's not even a conversation they're having. I think that's one of the gifts we can offer, is that space to have these conversations. Cool. Okay, I'm conscious of my time. I might be talking too much, so I better keep going. And Vlad, you keep pushing me to go faster if we need speed. There was a question, and I think Alex also asked it in way, where is the team coaching industry now and where is it heading? And you can see me scratching my head. I was wondering, well, I wonder what my answer is. And the best I could come up with is the next slide, where this is what this provoked in me. The guy with the phone, it looks like an underground or tube station. I kind of feel that's the team coaches. I think there's been a lot of team coaching offerings. Many of us have been on programs. I've been part of those offerings. I've been part of participant. We're ready for a train. I think we instinctively get this, that there's more to coaching than just coaching the one individual. There's the potential for teams to benefit from that coaching style of awareness. So we're getting ready. We're putting on our knapsacks. We're having these conversations. But I don't think yet organizations have fully decided whether they're going to offer us that train. And we might need to rethink our assumptions, because the second image is totally different than a train. It's quite dramatic. It's a road, it's a dam. I think we still need to have a conversation with organizations about how do we meet where they are. Because, and my next slide will show you, their world is getting more and more complex. Even the last few months, between coming back out of COVID, hybrid, supply chain issues, the war in Ukraine, the great resignation. There's so much going on for organizations, so that we think it's going to be this thing called team coaching, but they could be seeing it as something totally different. I think someone said to me the other day, if we see team coaching through the lens of one-to-one coaching, we're going to miss the opportunity here, that maybe this is going to be looking very different than how we might imagine it. So I think we're getting ready. I think the interesting part is, how do we partner with organizations to meet their expectations? And what does their world look like? So this slide is a build. We're all very used, I imagine, on this call to doing one-to-one coaching. So our focus has been on the leader. Most organizations I talk to, and I'd say, well, tell me about your budget for development, because I'm interested in budget. And they'll say, oh yeah, well, we can send leaders off onto programs, or we do individual leadership programs. And what about budget for teams? And they kind of go, you mean away days? And I go, no, learning development for teams. So coaching and organizations very much still focus on the leader. And if we build out this slide, as we work with the leader, we'll often engage with them in a conversation about their team. They may bring it as a topic, a challenging team member, or feeling, some help on how do they help their team get even better. If we build again, I think what we're offering as a team coach is, it's not just through the leader that we have these conversations. It's bringing the full team in to this conversation. What do they collectively want to achieve? That powerful question that Peter Hawkins keeps on asking teams. What do you need to do together that you can't do apart? It's such a powerful question. And again, gets to the heart of, I think there's many teams and organizations, but very few are fully performing, because the team got formed out of habit and the amount of thought and thinking has been quite limited. But what we also offer is something beyond this, because organizations are not just made of one team. And we think of this concept from the US military of teams. So what we're trying to do in helping teams be systemic is think about, and how do they work with other teams? I had a sales team recently, and getting them to go to the IT team and the finance team, often seen as their enemies. IT don't help us, finance doesn't give us money. But they never had a conversation about what is the goal of the sales team and what's your goal as the IT team, and how do we collaborate? There's so many silos. And I think COVID and hybrid working has recreated many silos, because we've just been trying to survive. But even beyond the organization, there's another system. And how do we get teams to start thinking about what their customers need? And beyond customers, we're looking at suppliers. How do they truly partner with their suppliers? And beyond suppliers, we're looking at investors. A lot of team coaching now is around investment bodies, but buying a company and bringing team coaches in, maybe to work with that organization. And even beyond those very monetary issues, there's the employee stakeholder group. And how do we get teams to engage them? And then how do we get teams to engage their communities? And I think there's one more here, I think, which is the biggest issue we all face, which is how do we get teams and organizations to pay attention to the beyond the human world of ecology? So there's something about what we're doing here is I was listening to a presenter last week say the world is so complex, there's no answers, but there's lots of ideas. So what we're trying to do, I think, is how do we help teams start having ideas about how do you manage this wider complexity? And if you go back to the first part of this slide, when I was coaching just a leader, that complexity gets often left outside the room. I think our job as team coaches is to bring that complexity in and help teams not solve it, but at least talk about it. So let me just check in with the panel. What are you making of this? Is this anything here grabbing your attention, or does it reflect what you're seeing?
I was thinking, looking at this, that the teams I've worked with, also as a team leader until recently, they were all inwards oriented. Everything was related about what was happening in the team, the dynamics, the processes. We do not work together good enough. Let's implement the agile methodology. Let's look at ways that we can build our cooperation so we can be better. They did not have a voice outside the team, and they were not aware of the complexity around. And I bet they never thought, I was part of the team. I never thought of the wider system of the ecology. I was thinking that we are staying home, so the planet will be much better. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of how much damage we provoke by staying at home, for instance. And working as a team.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I see in the comments, Marisha talking about experience where team coaching was an investment, it was the most effective investment in a leadership team, and the impact has been ongoing and has an impact on the culture. So again, we might get a chance to hear Marisha talk about that in the Q&A, but there's something about, again, I think the impact we can have as coaches is multiplied. It's more complex to work and it's messier, but it's multiplied because in working with a team, we're helping develop the individuals and the collective, and as you've mentioned, beyond the collective as well. So I'm going to keep going if it's okay. I'm probably a bit behind. Just a really next slide, I guess, is a one that Peter Hawkins often shares, where a CEO spoke to him and said, I've got lots of coaches who coach people and lots of consultants who consult, but the challenge is not in the parts or the people, but in the connections. So when Anna's point about how do we get that team going outside in and joining all these pieces together. So I know Peter would often say for him, a key part is what are the disconnections that need to be connected? That's not our job to do that, but how do we ask the team that? Those disconnections could be within the team, or they could be with their key stakeholders or beyond the organization. But how do we help work on the connections? Just a couple more slides about maybe understanding why team coaching is of interest to coaches. And I guess we're seeing more and more, and this is a build, and we can click through these, Vlad, is as one-to-one coaches, we're noticing, okay, there's maybe always been internal coaches, but more and more of the coaching skills are going to leaders and line managers. There is a trend of fewer organizations. So in a way, and they're going to employ fewer people. So our client bases may begin to shrink as well. The coaching AI, you think about Coach Hub, you think about those organizations who are commoditizing one-to-one coaching. I can get work with them and it's 30-minute coaching conversation and I might get paid $20 or $30. And so I think the challenge for many of us is there is a real demand from organizations to make coaching simpler, cheaper, more available, and that may not all serve us very well. So there's something about team coaching as a way for us to stay with the complexity that can't be recreated by artificial intelligence or by commoditizing the offering as well. It's more complex. Let's just go to the next slide and then we'll take a pause. So I just want to speak briefly to the book, and I'm conscious of my time here. We've got about 20 minutes. So what I might do is I might just speak to this and then we'll open up the Q&A. So I mentioned with David and Tammy, we worked with 37 different coaches, many of them working in pairs. We have 23 case studies from across the globe. And the next slide, which I'm going to end on, is about what were some of the key learnings. So one thing that struck us, and we really encouraged this, was there's lots of different ways to team coach, as there is to one-to-one coach. And I think that's good news. I know sometimes we all want the structure and the answer, and that speaks to the second bullet point of we can often be anxious about this space because it is more complex than one-to-one. It's more visible. There's not one person looking at me. There's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. There's different dynamics. But I always kind of say to people learning team coaching is you already have a lot of the skills. We will all team coach in our own way and honor what's in your backpack. If you come from a particular school of psychology, or you've got a particular process, or you've got energy around a particular aspect of leadership, bring that. And the great thing about the casebook is we have all very different ways of doing it, from Zulu concepts of community all the way to highly process-driven ways of doing it. They're all in that book. So the good news is there's no one way. The bad news is there's no one way. And so it's having that confidence to go and develop my own signature. I think what came through on the casebook was a level of anxiety. And again, it maybe speaks to what is this and where is it going? The anxiety is with the team coach. Am I good enough? Can I handle what's in front of me? The anxiety is with the team leader. What am I bringing in? And how will my team deal with this? And the anxiety is in a team of what's going to come out of these conversations. Christine Thornton always says, when any group come together, there's always anxiety in the room. And I think there is an element of, even for experienced one-to-one coaches, working with a team can make us anxious. And often the reaction to the anxiety is we get too structured and we get into control mode and we write out the agenda. And then we end up maybe facilitating. I think part of the skill is to live with the anxiety and feel free to have just enough process so that we can actually do the coaching in the moment. And again, there's always that choice of process or conversation. When I'm facilitating, it's all process. When I'm team coaching, there's enough process, and then it's knowing when do I stay with the conversation, and whatever happens to the agenda happens. Another theme from the book is the number of people who are team coaching with somebody else. It's not a have to do, but we recognized in the book there was a lot of co-coaching and the amount of work that took as well. There's one really great case where it goes through the work the team coaches did in advance to get aligned on their commonality and their differences. And I think one of the many benefits of working with another team coach is you're already role modeling a form of teaming to the team itself. What we also noticed in the case study was the system impact. Some of the cases don't end in a blaze of glory. They end because the leader leaves and the system stops the team coaching, or the system gets in the way of the work happening. And again, how do we encourage the team to engage with the system? How do we contract with the system to let the teams be successful? I think the last theme that really came from the book is team coaching can be messy. It's a roller coaster, much more than my one-to-one work, because there's something about me and one person. Maybe we can manage that a bit better. With the team coaching, we've got multiple stakeholders, we've got dynamics within the team, we've got the anxiety that I mentioned, we've got my anxiety. So it can be a roller coaster. And what it really speaks to is, in some of the cases, people talking about the value of supervision. It's very hard to process all of that messiness on your own. And I think that's a big area for team coaching, is much more support in terms of supervision. Let me just stop there. I want to check in with our panel, and then I want to open it up to the Q&A. But for the panel, do any of those jump out as particularly relevant to your experiences of team coaching? Alex, what's jumping out for you?
Sadly, yes. Yeah, but if I'm looking on your summary, and I'm relating with the last kind of bullet point, team coaching is messy and it needs supervision. What would be the algorithm behind? I mean, how often would you recommend for a team coach to receive supervision? Are there any key times within the process where you really need supervision? I mean, is it the opening phase, contracting phase, where you need more support rather than whatever?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a defined answer, because it also comes up to how many teams am I team coaching. I think, I probably have bandwidth to work with, 10, 12, 15 individual coaches at a time. With team coaching, because of the lifting involved and the intensity, I'm probably usually maxing out at 3 or 4, and they'll all be at different stages as well. So I think it's thinking about, if I'm not doing any team coaching, I probably don't need a team coach supervisor in the moment. So how many are you doing, and where is it at? I would say one thing I've experienced is doing supervision with my fellow team coach. So we both have individual supervisors, but there's something about a supervisor helping us look at our collective dynamic. For me personally, it's probably every kind of 3 months or so we have a session, but that may depend on how busy we are. And as often, you asked about when in the process, that conversation could be, we're in the middle of one, we're starting another, and we're coming to an end of something else. Or, even talking about trying to sell it and get interest, that can be part of it. So I feel like we jump around in terms of the stages we're at. But again, it's a space that we don't always get to have that conversation as team coaches. So I think it's needs must would be my sense of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. So, Vlad, are you happy to pause there? There's slides, and there's more slides, but slides are slides, and Vlad will share those with people. Happy for those to be shared. Let's open this up. We've got about 14 minutes. We'd love to get some other voices into the conversation, to ask any of the panel any questions. Vlad, do you want to look after the Q&A?
Yeah, we have one question that I'm not sure if we can answer in the time left. If you can go through a case study about objectives, process, type of exercises, and so on. It's from Simona, and we are glad she's with us. At least for a structure, maybe you can tell us what we can find in the book
Hmm. So the book is divided into different parts. Some of the cases are gathered by the philosophies that people are using. Uh, some are gathered by the different approaches they used. I guess, Simona, I can talk about one that I co-wrote, which was a senior leadership team that had just gone through a really busy period of getting started, and the CEO wanted space for the team to get out of the detail and be more strategic. So the process we did there was we used a combination of a diagnostic to get their feedback on themselves. We also got their board members to give the team feedback. So we came with feedback, but it was also just about creating the space. What we got into was the team leader liked a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And there's a concept there called the BHAG, which is called Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. It's like a vision. And so helping the team actually have the time. This is a very much, they were busy, they were very task focused, and to even give them the chance to breathe and to spend a day or so with us, creating what is your big, hairy, audacious goal. And they're a property organization, and they agreed that their goal was to change the face of how Dublin looked. So they buy properties all around Dublin. And from that, then we helped them develop some of that BHAG that also spoke to their stakeholders, their customers, their tenants, and their employees. And each of those pillars they built, and each of the leadership team sponsored one of those pillars. And someone, to be honest, we thought that was a decent piece of work, but this team went further. They took all that information and they shared it with the whole organization. And they began to organize their weekly Monday meetings around those 4 or 5 pillars. And what they've done with the team coaching is every 6 months, they take the diagnostic again, just as a way of taking a pulse check, like a health check, to see how they're doing. So so we did different exercises. We got them, brainstorming. We created psychological safety. We looked at norms. But what was really interesting about this case is the team took it to a much further degree than we could. And it's really important. There's only so much we can do. If we find that we're trying to push this on teams, we'll only get so far. It's almost watching out for where are the teams who are really up for this journey. And they're the hard ones to find. And sometimes we have to work with the ones that are maybe a bit more of a challenge. But for me, the big learning about this was they wanted to become more strategic. We gave them enough space and they took it to another degree that we hadn't seen before. So I could be cheeky and say the book, if you buy the book, you'll learn some more, but that's just a flavor of one. So there's something about we never quite know what's going to come out of this process, but it's about holding the space and letting them have ownership of the process. Would anybody else like to speak about any cases any of the panel have that you could share with Simona or anybody else? Or anything about the process?
I would ask something related to the vulnerability of a coach, of a team coach. Let's say you are in front of a team, you are coaching them, you found what are the issues they face, and suddenly they ask you a question and you don't know the answer. So what are you going to do? Are you going to tell them, okay, I have to admit that I don't know the answer for the moment, but I will do this, the research, and I will come with an answer to our next session? Or you just say something you have in mind, you are looking in a split second for a role, for a model that you already learned, and you serve them that model. So I'm a bit
And what do you
curious.
do? What is there any lessons from your one-to-one coaching work? If somebody asks you a question in one-to-one, what do you tend to do?
It is, if it is one-to-one, I think is better. Okay, I'm a human being. I admit that I might make mistakes, so I'm not afraid to do this. But if I am in front of a team, sometimes maybe is that anxiety that you were talking about.
So there's John Whittington, who has a really good book called Systemic Team Coaching. He talks about these seductions. So I don't know that, I obviously don't know the Romanian word for seduction, but they're almost like these attractions of wanting to be part of the team, because many of us work on our own. But another seduction is to be set up as the expert, as it is in one-to-one coaching. And even in your example, I think there's lots of times where I do have the answer, but I still won't answer it, because if I have the answer, what are they doing? So let me give you a different example. If I see conflict or tension between two people, my first question is always to ask the team, what do we want to do with this right now? Because if myself and Vlad, we keep on arguing all the time, and you notice that it's a bit uncomfortable, I don't think asking somebody out there what to do is the answer. I'd love to hear what Liliana is experiencing this, or Alex. So I think the more, back to that sustainable part in the EMCC, even when we could have the answer, I think it's about getting them to try and have the conversation. So how do I get out? I need to be, there's a very useful model by Peter, which talks about authority, presence, and impact. So I need enough authority to get into the room. So I know coaching, I know team coaching, but my presence and my impact, I think it's about putting my authority to the side and getting them to try and answer these conversations. What I also notice is they'll often talk to me and not to each other. So how do I hold up that mirror and said, why don't you ask one of your colleagues that question? Because the danger is we could become almost like another leader in the room. That's not where success is. So I think there is a real role for vulnerability. We have to bear that in mind, who the audience is and how they're going to react. But I think there's something about, if they're going to be vulnerable, we need to be vulnerable as well. But it's really interesting. It is interesting, as you say, when you're in front of all these faces, how it can feel a bit more pressurized to have the answer because there's many faces.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Deanna. Anything else jumping out?
Well, I have a dilemma and so on, because basically most of us, we've been trained in team coaching and we've been kind of recommended to work in pairs. However, you can see, in the market, team coaches taking alone an assignment and trying to do, whatever they can. How do you see, what are the pros and cons working, as an individual comparing with a pair of team coaches? And, very practical here.
Yeah. I can give you my view, and I'd love to open up to others. You're absolutely right. So if we're going to be priced and one person is a cost versus two, that's a challenge. I've done both. I think team size could be an issue. So I'm working with one team of 4, and it feels like maybe if there was 2 of us, it just kind of feels like the numbers are a bit strange. That's just my sense. 2 and 4 feels a bit. If it'd been 5, I think I would have been a bit more okay with it. So that's kind of just preference. I think the advantages are multiple. I find, especially with bigger teams, there's so much going on. So right now, I'm looking at Alex, and we're talking, and Liliana could be rolling her eyes, or Deanna could be looking at her phone, or whatever, and I don't get to see that because I'm looking at you. I'm having a second person is a second pair of eyes and ears, so they can pick up often what's happening in the pattern as opposed to the conversation. I think having 2 is also a benefit of role modeling, teaming, and role modeling not having the answers. So what myself and my fellow team coach like to do is, when we're not sure what to do next, we time out and we say, wait a second, can Vlad and I just have a quick conversation in front of you all? Vlad, what are you noticing right now about the room? And Vlad might say, listen, we're running out of time, or energy is low. I go, okay. So we have a conversation so that we don't know what the answer is, but we'll figure it out. And then we go back to them, or us being vulnerable with each other, or the fact that we're different personalities gives them somebody different to hear from. So I think we role model team. I think I also find more than one-to-one, team coaching, and one of the reactions of teams is when you try and disrupt them and challenge them, they may well come after you. It's one thing teams do. They survive by picking a scapegoat, as we say in English. And I've been triggered by that. Whereas if I have somebody with me, if I start getting exercise and I getting annoyed at Alex for always asking that question, the other person can take the heat off and maybe take a different position. So there is definitely a commercial challenge to it. I think for me, where I can, I make it non-negotiable, and I try and talk about the value of the second person and get away from the cost. I also often work with Melissa, who's a female coach. So we bring diversity, male, female. We bring different backgrounds. We bring different personalities. People might find me more engaging. They might find Melissa more engaging. And as I said, I think we can role model teaming as well. Has that helped at all, Alex? But the commercial challenge is there. And I know lots of really good team coaches who work on their own, and that's not wrong. I just think for many of us, because we work so much on our own, there's an additional challenge of development of what's it like to team with somebody else. Do any of you work with another team coach, or any observations on what I've shared around solo or in a pair? Liliana?
Yes, I am very much on the view of what you said. And I actually was just initiating a discussion with a team who is interested in team coaching, actually with a leader. And from the first conversation, I sense already the need of having a co-coach, because I was thinking that the context it's requiring this. And I was contacting one of my colleagues, and I was introducing my colleague to the sponsor and to the team leader, just to know each other, like introduction, and see how they are feeling in that environment. And I fully agree that I would like that all my assignments in team coaching to be with a co-coach. That's my view. I feel in this way, and I see the value.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other experiences?
I had only... sorry, Vlad. Go on.
I would say that working in a pair or in a group of team coaches, because it's possible to work in 3 or even 4, is depending on the project. It's also a challenge for the team coach to develop how to work in a team, and somehow it raises the awareness of interaction with the team. So in my opinion, there are both advantages and disadvantages to work in a pair or to work solo, but depending on the context, it's important to do both way. I also experienced as a participant in a team coaching when we were only 3 persons in the board, and we felt that having only one team coach for us will give a better dynamic than working with a pair of team coaches. And this is something that confirms what you said earlier.
Okay. It's interesting. And again, there's no right or wrong. I'm looking at Marisha Fogarty, who's leaving some comments there. I hope Marisha doesn't mind. Marisha, I know, did some team coaching last year when she was the leader of the team, and she had an external team coach. And I guess even from her comments about, the pair and the peer coach creates safety. So I think if team coaching is going to develop, I think it needs to be something team leaders can play an active role in. If like Marisha and others, they're able to recognize that they're in this team as well as out of it. But I'm sure her having another person gave that more space. And but there are commercial challenges. There's no doubt about it. And there's also, having to partner with somebody else takes compromise. So I'm used to doing it my way, and suddenly I have to work with somebody else and meet their needs. So that can be a challenge, but it's also a good development. And if we're talking team, maybe it's good for me to demonstrate team as well and recognize the challenges. So I'm conscious of our time, Vlad. I'm sorry we've run out of time.
No problem.
It's been
we are almost to finish, so we can expand a few minutes, or we can round up with takeaways from each participants, and we encourage all the people watch us in live can comments at least one takeaway from this session.
great. Would you like them to do that on the comments slide or the comments page? Yeah, one takeaway.
From those who watch us live, it's the way they can do it. From our panel, it's possible to do it now. So I will start with what I'm taking. The definitions was very good for me because remind two important aspects for team coaching. One is the potential, and second, sustainable solutions. And remind me that it's not always about effectiveness or performance. There are more things that a team might need.
Next slide.
I was struck about the system that gets in the way of the team's success, and this is something I want to look into more depth. As I never thought of this way, but it's exactly like this. Actually, it happened that I experienced that. I was just impressed that I could see it there on the slide. So it wasn't just an accident, it happens.
Yeah, that's what I know. Thank you.
I am taking away one of the key learnings, which is there is no one way to team coaching, which I like a lot, because I remember when I used some from my past experience, some things, and they worked very well with some teams, not with all, but actually some of them. So, as a conclusion, we can adapt. It depends of the team and depend of your experience, and you can adapt in that moment your coaching, team coaching.
Yeah, and don't forget to bring us. We have to bring us along as well, right? That's
yes, of course.
yeah. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
Alex, Liliana.
Alex.
Well, on my side, I think that the message is very clear. It's not an easy process, and actually, because you are working with many individuals in a very different context, system, and so on, the whole process, it's difficult. However, if you are looking to the benefits, as you said, performance, effectiveness, and so on, slowly but surely, the teams will start feeling the benefit of being coached together in comparison with individual coaching, for example, or training or team building.
So Colm was freezing, has a froze image still there.
I reckon we lost him for a bit.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, the takeaway is this awareness towards process versus coaching in the team, because it's a very fine line between stepping into the facilitation and remaining too much there, and maybe losing the coaching and the space into coaching.
Great. Thank you. So sometime the technology is making
Well,
us
I-
hard
I-
times. I think Colm will come back, hopefully. Until then, just to say for everybody that this was the first session, and we are going to slice the process of team coaching step by step, and we'll invite different guests to be able to talk and understand more about it. Also, somehow to experiment the way of being together in the moment and present. It is the first time when we meet together here as a panel. I think some of us, we are almost don't know each other, and it was a nice way to see how we collaborate and how we learn to work together in the panel. And let's take a moment to think what is important for each of us, and it's also a possibility for everyone who watch us to ask what is the most challenge that we have to think when it's coming about team coaching, and we'll try to address them in the next sessions. And Colm is back.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi had a moment. I'm sorry I missed the very end. I know you're into a debrief, but thank you again for the opportunity to be part of these sessions. It's great work that you're all doing, and I'm feel privileged to be part of it. So thank you, and thanks for the panel discussion. It's lovely to hear all your experiences. So I hope it was well received today. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Colm.
Thank you.
All the very best, and if I can help with anything, shout anytime.
Sure.
we will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
So
Bye.
we'll think
Bye-bye.
about what other topics. It was very nice to have you, and thank you everybody who watch us live or recorded, because there will be also possibility to watch the recording of this session. And wish all the best to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.